Steve Harvey had hosted the family face-off for 19 years, and in all that time he had never once stopped mid-question. Not for a fire alarm, not for a fainting contestant, not the day a man proposed on his stage, but on a Thursday afternoon in March, in the middle of a routine question about promises, a 71-year-old woman in the third row stood up with a plain white envelope in her hand, and Ray Calloway went completely still. The card stayed frozen in his fingers. The music kept playing for 4 more seconds before somebody in the booth thought to kill it. 200 people watched an old woman look past the host, past the cameras, and directly at her own son. What she said next was 11 words long. It ended a marriage, and it saved a woman's life. And she had been carrying it in her purse for 8 months. The family was the Bells, from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Grant Bell was 47 and sold real estate. And he was the kind of man who was very good on camera without ever having been on camera. He had a big laugh and a firm handshake, and he remembered everybody's name. In their town, he was the guy who ran the fundraiser, the guy who emceed the fall festival. People liked Grant Bell. That mattered later, because it explained how a thing that big had stayed hidden that long. His wife was Dana Bell, 45, a school nurse at the middle school for 16 years. Dana was the opposite of her husband in every way that shows up on television. She talked with her hands folded. She laughed a beat late, after she was sure something was funny. She had spent her whole working life sitting on a stool in a small room being calm at children who were bleeding. And it had made her the steadiest person in any room she walked into. Around her neck, on the day of the taping, there was nothing. That empty space is the whole story, and nobody in the building knew it yet, except 3 people, because for 22 years Dana Bell had worn a small gold locket that had belonged to her mother, Ruth Ann, who died in 2003. It was an old locket, oval, with a worn wren carved into the front. Her mother had worn it empty for 40 years. Dana asked her once why she never put a picture in it, and her mother said, "I'll put something in it when I'm done living." Dana wore it every day for 2 decades. Then, 8 months before that taping, it disappeared. She looked everywhere. She took apart the couch. She pulled the trap out from under the bathroom sink. She cried in her car in the school parking lot on a Tuesday because she could not stop thinking about it. And Grant sat with her at the kitchen table and held her hand and told her it probably went out with the boxes when they cleaned the garage, honey, and that she should stop tearing the house up, because it was making her sick. Dana stopped looking in November. The other 2 people who knew were Grant, and the woman standing 4th in line on the Bell family team. Her name was Brianna. She was 31. She had worked in Grant's office for 2 years, and when the show asked the Bells to submit 5 family members, Grant put down his wife, his daughter Sophie, his brother Kyle, himself, and Brianna, whom he listed as office manager, practically family. The person he took off the list to make room was his mother. Eleanor Bell was 71 years old and had been on that list first. She had told her whole Sunday school class she had bought a pale blue cardigan for it. 2 weeks before the taping, Grant called her and explained, kindly and at length, that the stage had stairs and the taping ran long and he was worried about her knees, and wouldn't she rather sit down front and just enjoy it, mama, with a good seat and no stress. Eleanor said that sounded fine. Eleanor Bell had not had any trouble with her knees in her life. She sat in seat 14, row 3, on the aisle, in her pale blue cardigan, holding a white envelope in a black purse on her lap, and she had every intention of taking that envelope home unopened, the way she had every day for the previous 8 months. The show taped at 2 o'clock. The Bells drew the Ruiz family from San Antonio, 5 people who came out laughing, and did not stop for the next hour. $25,000 on the line. Ray Calloway came out to his music, and the lights came up, and the 2 families lined up across from each other. And that is where the small things started. They were very small. That is important. Nothing that happened in the first 20 minutes of that taping would have looked like anything at all if you did not already know. Grant walked his team out and put his hand on the small of Brianna's back to steer her toward the podium. It lasted less than a second. In the third row, Eleanor Bell shifted the purse on her lap. Ray did his introductions, and Grant introduced his family, and when he got to the fourth position he said, "And this is Brianna, she runs my whole life," and the audience laughed, and Dana laughed too. Half a beat late. The first face-off went to the Ruiz family. Their grandmother Alma, 78 years old, beat Grant to the buzzer and then apologized to him for it, which got the biggest laugh of the day. Then the questions came down the bell line. Kyle answered. Sophie answered. Sophie Bell was 19 and had her mother's steadiness. And she was the first person on that stage to notice something, though she could not have told you what. It was this. When Brianna gave her answer, Grant turned his whole body toward her. When Dana gave hers, he did not turn at all. Sophie noticed it twice. Then she started counting. But then, the game got good, and everybody forgot to watch the bells for a while. Because the Ruiz family stole the round and Alma did a small dance, and the studio went up, and for about 10 minutes it was just a game show. The score at the second commercial break was 141 to 112, Ruiz family ahead. During that break, the makeup woman came out to blot faces under the lights, and she started at the end of the bell line. And when she got to Brianna, she said something and reached toward her throat, the way people do when they see something pretty. Brianna smiled and touched it, and said thank you. There was a small gold locket lying on her collarbone, oval, with a worn shape on the front that could have been a bird. The overhead lights caught it for maybe 2 seconds. 2 people in that building saw it. The first was a camera operator on the left side jib, who did not know what he was looking at, and simply thought it was a nice detail, and held on it for a beat and a half. That beat and a half is the reason 41 million people eventually watched this. The second was a 71-year-old woman in row 3, whose hands went very still on top of her black purse. Eleanor Bell had seen that locket before. She had seen it in a photograph of Dana's mother at a wedding in 1981. She had seen it on Dana's neck at every Christmas for 22 years. She had seen it in a jeweler's paper envelope in the console of her son's truck the previous July, when she borrowed the truck to haul mulch and went looking for a napkin. Inside that envelope had been a small yellow work order from a jewelry store in Poplar Bluff. It listed 1 antique gold locket. It listed the service performed. Chain shortened, 20 inches to 16. It listed the customer name, Grant Bell, and the date, and the price, $38. Eleanor had sat in her son's truck in her own driveway for a very long time that day. She confronted him that same week. She did it privately, in her kitchen, the way she believed things ought to be done. She did not raise her voice. She put the work order on the table between them and she said, "That's Dana's mother's." And Grant Bell cried. He cried hard, and he said it was over, and he said he had already ended it. And he said he was going to get it back, and put it somewhere Dana would find it and let her think it had turned up. He asked his mother to give him time to fix it himself. He said, "Please don't be the one who blows up my family." Eleanor gave him time. She gave him 8 months. She gave him 8 months because she was 71 years old, and because of something that had happened to her in 1979, and that is a part of this story that did not come out until later, and it is the reason for everything she did that day. The third round started. The Bells won it, and clawed back to within 9 points. Grant was on fire. He was doing what Grant Bell did best, which was fill a room. He high-fived his brother. He hugged his daughter. When Dana got an answer wrong, he said, that's all right," in a voice you use with a child, and patted her podium twice, and turned away. In row 3, Eleanor's thumb had begun moving back and forth across the flap of the envelope in her purse. Sophie Bell had stopped counting by then. Sophie had gotten to 11 and had quit, because at 11 she had also noticed that her mother had stopped looking down the line. The score was tied at 188 when Ray Calloway pulled the card for the 4th round. He read it and made a face he sometimes made, the one that meant the writers had handed him a good one. "All right," he said. "Here we go. Name something a person can never take back." The buzzer went to Grant Bell. Grant leaned into the microphone with that big, easy smile that had sold 400 houses. "A promise," he said. And the board flipped. Number 2 answer. 26 points. The audience clapped. Grant turned and pointed at his brother and mouthed something. And the Bell family started cheering, and the game went on for exactly 1 more second. Then a woman stood up in row 3. She did not shout. That is what people remember. There was no scene. A 71-year-old woman in a pale blue cardigan simply rose to her feet in a seated audience, which makes a person the loudest object in a room without them making any sound at all. Ray Calloway saw the movement and turned, and he stopped talking. The card stayed up in his hand. His mouth stayed slightly open. The music played on for 4 more seconds because nobody in the booth had ever seen him do that before, and nobody knew what the cue was. Eleanor Bell was not looking at Ray. She was looking down the aisle at her own son. "Grant," she said, "that necklace is not hers. It's Dana's mother's." 11 words. Nobody moved. The floor manager looked at the booth. The booth looked at the floor manager. 200 people looked at Brianna, who had already put her hand flat over her collarbone, which is the single worst thing she could have done, because until that moment half the room had not known where to look. On stage, Dana Bell turned her head. The tape of her face at that moment is the most watched 11 seconds in the history of the program, and it is not what anybody expects. She did not scream. She did not cry. She looked at the necklace, and then she looked at her husband, and something in her face went smooth and quiet and terribly calm. It was the face she used at work when a child came into her office with a bone at the wrong angle. It was the face of a woman handling an emergency. She had known for a while. That is what came out later. Not the details, not the woman. But she had known for a while the way you know weather is coming. Ray Calloway lowered his card. He is the only reason this did not turn into something ugly, and he has said in every interview since that he had no plan whatsoever, and was mostly just trying not to make it worse. He said, "We're going to hold for a minute." Then he walked down off the stage into the audience, which he had never done in 19 years, and he stood in the aisle next to Eleanor Bell, and he asked her very quietly if she wanted to sit down. She said, "No, thank you." She said, "I have something in my purse and I want to give it to my daughter-in-law, and then I'll sit down." And she took out the plain white envelope she had been carrying since July, and inside it was a small yellow work order from a jewelry store in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And she walked up onto the stage in her pale blue cardigan on knees that had never given her a day of trouble, and she handed it to Dana. Grant said, "Mama." Eleanor did not look at him. Dana Bell read the work order. It took her about 6 seconds. Chain shortened, 20 inches to 16. Grant Bell. July 11th, $38. Then, Dana folded it in half and put it in the pocket of her slacks, and she walked 4 steps down the line and stood in front of a 31-year-old woman who was shaking so hard she could not keep her hand on her collarbone. And Dana Bell said the sentence that made the clip travel. "I would like my mother's necklace, please." That was it. That was all of it. No name calling. Nothing you would have to bleep. A middle school nurse asking for her property back in the same voice she used to ask a 7th grader to hold still. Brianna reached behind her neck with both hands. Her fingers did not work at first. She got it undone on the 3rd try, and she put it into Dana's open palm. And she said, "I'm sorry," and Dana said, "I know." Then, Dana closed her hand around it and did not open it again for 4 hours. Grant Bell tried to talk. Of course he did. He came out from behind his podium and he started building the thing he had been building for 8 months, and he got about 9 words in. "Dana, this is not. You don't understand what this." Grant, Eleanor Bell said her son's name the way only a mother can say it. And he stopped talking, and everyone in that studio understood that he had been stopping when she said it that way for 47 years. She turned to Ray Calloway, and then she turned a little further, to the cameras, and she said the part that people still quote. "I raised him," she said. "So this one is mine to carry too." Then she told them why she stood up. "I knew in July," she said. "I've had that paper in my purse for 8 months. He asked me for time to fix it himself, and I gave it to him, because he's my son and I wanted to believe him. And then he took me off this team and he put her on it, and he sat me down in the 3rd row, and I watched him walk her out under those lights next to his wife, and I understood that he was never going to stop. He was going to let Dana be the last person in America to know. She looked at her daughter-in-law. "I wasn't going to let you find out from strangers," she said. "You're going to find out from family." And then she said the thing that explained the whole 8 months and the whole 71 years, and it is the reason people wrote 19,000 letters about a game show. "In 1979, my husband had a woman in Sixton," Eleanor said. "His mother knew about it for 4 years. 4 years. She sat across from me at every holiday dinner, and she held my babies, and she never said one word to me. And when I finally found out on my own, she told me she kept quiet because she didn't want to hurt me." Eleanor's voice did not break, but it got very low. "She didn't keep quiet to protect me. She kept quiet to protect him. And I promised myself, if I ever ended up on that side of it, I would not do to another woman what was done to me." She sat down. There was no applause. Somebody said later that was the strangest part of the whole day, that 200 people did not clap. They just sat there. A few of them were crying. One woman in the back row had her hand over her mouth. The Ruiz family had not moved or spoken in 6 minutes. Then Alma Ruiz, 78 years old, walked across the gap between the two teams, which you are absolutely not supposed to do, and she took Dana Bell's free hand in both of hers and held it and said nothing at all. And the two of them stood there like that until the floor manager called the break. They did not finish the game. The Bells forfeited. The Ruiz family took the $25,000, and every one of them looked miserable about it, and Alma Ruiz sat in the parking lot of that studio for almost an hour afterward, in a rental car, waiting, when Dana finally came out. Alma got out and gave her a piece of paper with a phone number on it and said, "You call me. I mean it. Any hour." They still talk every Sunday. Alma Ruiz has since been to Cape Girardeau twice. Here is the part that surprised everybody, including the network. The producers were not going to air it. They had 6 lawyers on it by Friday, and the plan was to shelve the episode. Pay everyone their appearance fee, and pretend the Thursday taping never happened. Dana Bell called them and asked them to air it. She asked for 2 things. Take Brianna's face out. Blur it, cut it, whatever you have to do. She is 31 and she is going to have to live in this town too. And take out anything my daughter said. Then air the rest of it. They asked her why. She gave them 1 sentence, and it ended up printed in about 400 articles. "Somebody is watching this who is about to be the last one to know," she said. "Let her hear it from family." It aired in April. 41 million people saw it inside of a week. But the number that mattered was smaller and stranger. In the 6 weeks after that episode aired, the show received more than 19,000 letters, and the overwhelming majority of them came from women over 50, and they were not about Grant Bell at all. They were about Eleanor. They were from mothers-in-law, hundreds and hundreds of them. Women who had known something for a year, or 5 years, or 20, and had never said it, and who now could not sleep. One woman in Ohio wrote 3 lines and nothing else. "I have known since 2011. I told my daughter-in-law on Tuesday. Thank you for going first." Dana Bell and Grant Bell divorced that fall. It was quiet and it was quick, and neither of them has ever said one public word about the terms of it. Grant sold his half of the agency and moved about 90 miles away. Sophie sees her father. Dana has never once asked her not to, and has never once asked her what they talk about. Eleanor Bell still lives in Cape Girardeau. Her son calls her every Sunday, and she takes every call, and she has told the 2 reporters who managed to get her on the phone the same thing both times. "He is my son, and I love him, and I did not stop loving him for 1 second that day." Loving somebody is not the same as covering for them. It took me until I was 71 to learn the difference, and I would like everybody younger than me to learn it faster. Eleanor and Dana still eat Sunday dinner together every single week. They have not missed one in 3 years. It is at Dana's house, and Eleanor brings the rolls, and Sophie comes when she is home from school. People in that town found this arrangement confusing for about a year, and then simply accepted it, the way small towns do. Ray Calloway hosted for 4 more seasons, and was asked about the Bell taping constantly, and he always corrected the premise of the question. "Everybody wants to talk about me freezing," he would say. "I froze because I'm a coward and I didn't know what to do." The brave person in that room was a 71-year-old woman who stood up in front of 200 strangers and did the hardest thing a mother can do, which is refuse to protect her own child from the truth. I just held a card and got out of her way. There is one last thing, and it is small, and Dana Bell tells it herself now. On the rare occasions she agrees to speak anywhere. That locket had a 20-inch chain for 40 years, because her mother liked it to sit low near her heart. It had been cut down to 16. Dana took it to a jeweler in Cape Girardeau that summer, not the one in Poplar Bluff. She had the chain replaced and set back to 20 inches, exactly where her mother wore it, and it cost her $55, and she paid it in cash. And then she did something her mother never did in 40 years of wearing that locket. She opened it, and she put something inside. It is a photograph, cut down small with nail scissors, of her mother at 19 years old, standing in a field in Missouri, squinting into the sun, laughing at somebody outside the frame. Dana wears it every day. When people ask her about it, and they do, because everybody in 3 counties knows exactly what that necklace is, she gives them the same answer. My mother said she'd put something in it when she was done living, Dana says. She never got around to it. So I did it for her. And I figure now it holds the two of us.